Thanks for listening to Orion's From the Battlefield to the Boardroom podcast. UPS is moving the world forward while delivering what matters, driven by a team of nearly 500,000 employees across the world. While we all recognize the company's logo and the services they provide to customers, you may not know about the variety of career opportunities they offer and their outstanding culture and commitment that allows employees to thrive in their careers. With a strong veteran presence in its workforce, UPS gives you access to resources and support needed to create a lasting career filled with personal and professional growth. Kaitlyn, Bolena, and Wesolowski, both members of the UPS team, joined the podcast to discuss their backgrounds in career progression with UPS, as well as the military-friendly culture and opportunities for veterans and military spouses. If you've never thought to look for a career at UPS, I have a feeling you might want to after listening to this podcast. Click the link in the show notes to learn more and apply. Hi, Eric and Kaitlyn. Thanks for joining me. I'm so excited to have you guys and learn more about your individual roles and backgrounds and careers with UPS. So to kick things off, let's just get started by hearing a little bit about you guys. Eric, would you like to go first?
Yeah. Thanks for having us, Megan. It's always a pleasure working with Orion. My name is Eric Wesolowski, and I lead a lot of our veteran recruiting efforts here at UPS. I've been with UPS for approximately about 3 years combined total of service. And before that, I was in the Marine Corps for about 10 years active, and then I've had about 3.5 years on the reserve component side.
Awesome. Kaitlyn, what about you?
Thanks so much for having me. I've been with UPS for about 3 years. Actually, Eric and I started at the same time. Fun fact. And my husband was active duty Army until about 3 months ago. So he did 9 years in the military before we just transitioned out. And I started recruiting in in clinical healthcare staffing. Did some non-clinical healthcare, and then kind of got an opportunity with UPS, and I've been here ever since.
Awesome. Well, you guys both have very interesting backgrounds, and I've never had a spouse and a veteran on at the same time. So I'm excited to explore that as it relates to career challenges and different things, because I know that you guys will have kind of be able to see both sides of the coin on that. So that's exciting.
Yep.
For both of you, Eric, I'll ask you first. Were there any challenges that you faced when you were getting out of the military and transitioning into a civilian career?
Yeah, for sure. There was quite a few challenges, and I kind of want to start from the beginning. I didn't really have the biggest plan when I transitioned out in 2021, and I had a rough time figuring out exactly what what skills translated over to the military. My whole background in the military was all infantry side, so combat related MOS. And so I had a really hard time with what skills transfer over. And then eventually it started to click as you start to go through, you start to find yourself outside in the civilian world. And um, I went through my first career outside the military was with pretty much sales. So I was working for a company called Better Mortgage at the time. And doing a lot of sales, a lot of loan sales when rates were really great at that time back in 2021. And I went through a layoff. I was with Better for about a year or so and ended up going through a layoff at that time. And during that time, I think honestly, that was one of the best things that could happen to me because you have a secure job in the military. You don't really have to worry too much of the next move or whatever that looks like. You sign your contract, you're in. Um, but at that point in time, right, it's all on you. And so I ended up going through sales, and I found myself laid off at that time. And like I said, a best move because at that point in time, I was able to reset, and I had a very valuable lesson that I learned during that layoff is like you always have to keep, your resume up to date, your LinkedIn always very up to date as well, because, at that time I didn't. And so I had to start back over from transition and then layoff and then back over again. So very valuable lesson that I learned from that. But overall, a lot of the skills that transferred over at that time I didn't really know. It was a lot of organizational skills, project management skills that I really felt were a good fit for me as well. And just, figuring out exactly what you want. Are you somebody who wants to be in front of people? Are you somebody who, you work better when you're alone or something like that in a remote role of that nature? So, yeah.
That the challenges that you shared in terms of what your military occupation was and deciding what you wanted to do out and when you get out, not having like an exact match, I feel like is
Mhm.
something that we hear a lot. And I think one of the great things is that, like you said, the organizational skills that you have gained in the military can translate into a sales role and it can translate into what you do at UPS. It's probably more so the key is finding an organization that also values those things and knows that that comes from the military. And even if you don't have the exact tangible skill match, you have a lot of the other things that would make you successful in the company. So I think that's great and seems to be very representative of what I've seen with UPS.
Yeah,
Um,
for
Kaitlyn, what
sure.
about, yeah, Kaitlyn, what about you? Challenges as a Navy or as a, just messed that up again, an Army spouse. Um, I know that that kind of has different challenges, but you have a lot of moving around and
Mhm.
probably feeling like your career takes the back seat to your spouse. So what were some of those challenges for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the hardest part about being a military spouse is balancing a career and then also kind of being the primary. If you have kids, you're the primary for anything because you never know when your spouse is going to be gone. The biggest challenges for us, and I actually got really lucky in that I was able to get recruited by another military spouse for a job as a recruiter. So my first kind of recruitment job, my first big girl job, as I called it, because it was after I finished college, which I finished online. Um, that was a recruiting with healthcare, clinical healthcare staffing. And she was an Army spouse. She was a good friend of mine's neighbor. We all lived on base together. So she referred me. And so I was able to kind of get my foot in the door in healthcare staffing or just any sort of staffing environment is very kind of sales-esque. And it made it easier to kind of leverage those skills into other roles. It's easy to get a job in sales once
Mhm.
you've kind of got some experience with it. So that was right before COVID. COVID happened. I went remote um, for about all of COVID and then had a baby, left that. That job turned into a referral and got another work from home job. So the location aspect, the moving frequently, we moved from Washington to Hawaii in that time frame. I got really lucky in that the roles that I was working or the companies I was working for were remote, and so I was able to take that with me, and I didn't have to worry about kind of a job change. But I know that's something a lot of spouses have to deal with is
Mhm.
changing careers. Can you transfer? A lot of people work on base or try to go federal, like in the federal system, so that way they can transfer their roles when they move. But from there, I got lucky in that I got another opportunity on LinkedIn. A recruiter man randomly messaged me and was like, "Hey, we're looking for a recruiter in Hawaii. Would you be interested?" And at the time, I really wasn't, but I was like,
Mhm.
"Sure, absolutely. I'll talk to any recruiter who reaches out to me because you never know." And that turned into UPS. So it was, navigating the relocations is the hardest part, I think, as a
Mhm.
military spouse. I'm lucky in that I've been able to work remotely, and I think that kind of the push towards remote was really good for military spouses, especially if you have some sort of degree or education, because that is another aspect that can be challenging for spouses is that maybe they weren't able to finish college or, maybe they don't know what resources they have to complete those, complete education. And there are resources out there. So knowing things like that helps too.
Yeah, that's great. And Kayla, I'm especially interested in your background because now that you've shared that you were in healthcare staffing,
Hmm.
and I know that you have like a mechanical background too. So I'm kind of, it kind of makes you a unicorn. You don't see that many people with that
I've
experience.
done IT too.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I'm definitely looking forward to exploring that a little bit more. But to dive in a little bit to your career with UPS, um, I'll have you answer these since Eric's not on. Hopefully he
Sure.
joins again. um, so just to learn a little bit more about your time with UPS, when did you first join the team? I think you mentioned it, but
Yeah, so I've been with UPS almost exactly 3 years. Prior to 2023, UPS had a contract with a company called Accenture, and so Accenture handled all of their external recruitment. And Eric and I both actually started with Accenture. So
Okay.
we were recruiters for Accenture supporting UPS. We were both, at least I was specifically hired for UPS's project. And so we did that for a year. We handled all external recruitment. And then in April of 2023, UPS brought everything back internally, and Eric and I were both lucky enough to be brought on with UPS internally. So now I handle internal and external recruitment at UPS. And then currently I do mechanics and professional engineering. So we do our union mechanics, and then we have professional engineering, which are our specialists, our supervisors. I do a couple of non-union mechanics as well for our healthcare team. UPS has so many different functions, and like there's UPS healthcare, there's supply chain solutions, there's so many little pieces of UPS that kind of all fall under the, overarching UPS umbrella. So I specifically do union and non-union mechanics, and then professional engineering, typically automotive fleet supervisors and facilities engineers. So basically kind of the management of the mechanics that I work or that I also hire. And then I've also supported UPS and IT. I did a lot of IT prior to last summer. So lots of IT. I've done operations, but mechanics are kind of my favorite. They're kind of my bread and butter, if you will. I love working with mechanics, and I love working with the union employees. It's a good setup, and it's also, I think, the most transferable for people in the military who are maybe getting out, especially if they're not officers. If they're enlisted and have only done a couple of contracts, our mechanics are really going to be the most. Of course, if they have that kind of experience from being in the military, I think that is a natural progression into UPS if you're not looking for a management role.
Got it. Kaitlyn, I can tell that you're a recruiter, and I'm sure you're a very good one. You just seem to be a wealth of knowledge. To kind of follow up on that, I know you said that a recruiter had reached out to you on LinkedIn about this role. So what was it that kind of attracted you to UPS? Because obviously we all know UPS as a brand, but the employment brand, I guess, is a little bit different because we know what UPS does, it's not that you necessarily know that you want to work there. So what was it that made you want to work there?
So I have a personal connection. My dad was a UPS driver for 36 years.
Okay.
He just retired last July. So I had obviously that personal connection. I grew up in UPS. Like I grew up going to see my dad. Our Christmas Eve tradition, because drivers work on Christmas Eve, was to go meet my dad for lunch at the same pizza spot because he ran the same route for 15, 20 years. So I have a personal connection to UPS. So that was kind of what enticed me to get my foot in the door at the very least. But what really kind of made me fall in love with being at UPS is one of the biggest draws for me anyway is that UPS is a huge promote from within company. So it's a bit of a dated statistic now. In 2019, I think 70% of our open roles were filled internally. So especially in management opportunities, there's a great opportunity for once you get your foot in the door to promote within UPS. So once you get in, the upward promotion, whether that's up into management and you're a driver and you go into management and then you're an on-road supervisor and you go up that way, or if you want to learn other parts of the business, the opportunities are there because UPS is such a big company. So you're definitely never stuck in a role with UPS if you don't want to be. You have options, and I really appreciate their push for that. So once you kind of come in, the opportunities are endless.
I love that. That's awesome. So Eric, what about you? I know that you've experienced some career progression since you've been at UPS. So can you tell me a little bit about that? Also, I guess kind of to backtrack a little bit, what made you want to work for UPS as well? Because I know you had the sales role before. So what attracted you? So we'll start there. What made you want to work for UPS?
Yeah, for sure. So honestly, before I joined the service, I was going through college at the time in Oklahoma, and I was actually working for UPS part time as a package handler. So I was loading up the trucks really, really early in the morning, and I did that for probably about 2 years. And at that same point in time, I decided to join the Marine Corps at that time, and I always loved working for UPS at that time. And then fast forward probably 10, 12 years later down the road, after I was going through that layoff, the powerful connection of networking, I ended up running into, I think Kaitlyn had mentioned her and I both came from Accenture as recruiters. And the power of networking at the time, I was good friends with actually one of the Accenture global leads who got me the role over at Accenture at the time, and had no idea that the project was going to be with UPS at the time. So I was super excited when I found out I was going to be working for UPS at that time. And then fast forward a little bit more, Kaitlyn and I both kind of transitioned over to UPS for on the full-time side as well. So we became UPS employees after that. Um, with that, inside the career progression, I started as a recruiter as well. And then probably about, and my kind of focus at that point in time was sales as well. Since I had a little bit of a sales background, I kind of focused on sales recruiting at the time. And then fast forward a little bit longer, about a year and a half, going on 2 years now, Lloyd Knight, my boss, ended up pulling myself over to our veterans initiative, our veteran strategy team at that time. And that was honestly one of the best. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better role, being a veteran and really being able to give back lessons that I've learned and be able to be in this big network together with, helping veterans find careers over at UPS. And so, I've been in this role for about a year and a half now, going on 2, and absolutely love it.
That's awesome. I love how both of you can kind of share this full circle moment. Kaitlyn, with your dad being a UPS employee, and then you working there, and then Eric, you having been a package handler over 10 years before coming back to work there. I think that's really cool. So I love that for both of you. But Kaitlyn, how about, I know you've talked about some of the different things that you've done at UPS, but can you talk a little more specifically about kind of the career progression that you've had?
Yeah, so I started in clinical healthcare, did that for a year. Then I went to non-clinical healthcare. So I went from, hiring nurses during COVID, which is really, really hard, to hiring anybody who would be in a clinical setting that wouldn't need a license to practice. So I did that for I think total 2 years, 2.5 years. And then from there, I also did a little bit of project management. I coordinated flu shot and wellness clinics in the Pacific Northwest. So that was actually my very first kind of stepping into recruiting. That was the very first thing I did. I recruited nurses to go do flu shot and wellness clinics for companies like Boeing. So we did a lot of coordinating on that role. And then I went into a full-time nurse recruiting during COVID. And then after that, I was doing non-clinical healthcare staffing. A recruiter reached out to me as the Accenture contract, I guess, required somebody that sat in Hawaii to help with our Hawaii roles. And I happened to be a recruiter in Hawaii, and that worked well for me. So I did that. Like I said, we supported external recruitment. So I did IT, operations, mechanics. I did not touch sales. Eric, that is totally you, not me. Sales is the one thing I feel like I haven't done at UPS. So I started there. And I've kind of, when we transitioned into UPS as a full-time UPSer, I was lucky enough to do job group 66 and that's our mechanics team. None of the recruiters that we had on the team currently that were doing internal recruitment had ever done our union mechanic roles before, because those are always sourced externally once by the time they come to our team. So I was lucky enough to get to do that, as well as, like I said, non-union healthcare mechanics. I'm now kind of also starting to do some of like our projects team, process improvement, that kind of thing, help out there as I can and as I'm asked to do that. So it's been nice getting to see the different business functions that we have, because UPS does have so many, and getting to have so many different experiences. I mean, clinical healthcare is completely different than IT, which is completely different than hiring union mechanics. Our union roles have a completely different pay structure and benefit system. And I mean, it's union, so it's totally its own separate thing with the rules and how the recruitment process works, how the offer process works. It's all completely different than even say hiring an automotive fleet supervisor versus hiring a mechanic. Totally separate things. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting to see and kind of nice to get to have experienced all of that and keep my skills fresh in recruitment. Because like I said, IT is not the same as a mechanic at all.
Yeah.
Completely different types of recruiting.
Yeah. Well, what you said, Kaitlyn, several minutes ago was that at UPS, you never feel stuck because there's always new things to learn and so many different parts of the business. I think that's something that some people struggle with. Kind of, do I want to go work for a small company or a big company? Because, of course, there's kind of pros and cons. But one of the things that it seems like from talking with you guys about UPS is that you maybe have a little bit of both to an extent because it is a very large company. It seems like maybe it has a smaller company feel because you are able to get so involved in so many different areas. So again, I think just hearing you both share your stories about that and demonstrate in different ways how you are able to do that is a big testament to how UPS provides career development and training and the opportunities really to branch out and do stuff that you're passionate about. So I think that's great. For each of you, Eric, I'll ask you first, what does a
Yeah.
typical day look like for you?
Yeah, for me, so I do a lot of so my boss Lloyd Knight, he really engages with a lot of our different partnerships throughout the United States here. And those partnerships that he creates, I really do a lot of maintaining of those partnerships. So um, ultimately, what I like to do is create, lead funnels as far as with the different partnerships that we do have, and I oversee a lot of those funnels coming through. Whether it's, coming from Orion when you guys go visit, uh, a handful of the military base establishments throughout the U.S. I really see those applications and those intake forms come in. And then once I see those come in, I'll start to outreach to a lot of people who show interest with UPS at that time. And really where I come into play is being able to, translate some of the military skills that, I've been accustomed to or that I know, or I know that the knowledge of those, and then transfer those over to UPS and be able to find the best position possible for that veteran at the time. And a good success story I always love to use is about a year ago we've had somebody who reached out via LinkedIn, and that LinkedIn message turned into a few phone calls within about probably the LinkedIn message came in. 3 days later, probably had a phone call. And then from that phone call, we were able to sit down with a 24-year Army veteran at the time, retired of the Army. And just based off that conversation, we found the role that he was really, really interested in, and something that really he had the skills from his career in the military that really transferred over to the UPS crew at the time. And it was a program management role, and it was remote at the time as well. And we ended up taking that conversation from finding exactly what he wanted, and fast forward, I think it was ended up about 3 weeks later, he had a start date with us. So went through the hiring process, interview, initiated an offer letter to him at that time. And probably 3 to 4 weeks later, he had a position with us as he was on his terminal leave, exiting the Army there. So I love using that story. And that's a huge, powerful of, reaching out and just networking as well.
Yeah. Well, and also, Eric, for you, I'm sure that that is a very rewarding part of your job as a veteran yourself, is being able to help other veterans as they transition off of active duty.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. So, Kaitlyn, what about you? I can't grasp what a day in the life would look like for you because it sounds like you do a lot of different things.
I do a lot of different things. A big part of my day is talking to candidates. We call them HR fit screens here. I've heard them called G2s. I've heard them called a whole host of different things, but basically connecting with the candidate about the role itself, giving them the details. We talk schedule, we talk compensation, we talk, location. I have recruited roles in every time zone in the United States, including Alaska and Hawaii. So that's 6 time zones to coordinate. It can be a bit much. So a lot of my day is coordinating those fit screens. The great thing about UPS is that for the vast majority of our roles, we usually have a pretty good candidate flow. People really do want to work with UPS or work for UPS, and so that really helps. But of course, there's always going to be those roles, CDL mechanics specifically, and Eric knows that as well. There's always those
Yeah.
roles that are really going to be a challenge to fill, whether that's because of the job requirements themselves, the location. We have a lot of buildings that are, out in the middle of nowhere that maybe it's just one mechanic in that building. So we use do a lot of kind of sourcing, Indeed, LinkedIn, those kinds of things. So that's a big part of my job. But the bulk of it is actually talking to the candidates and the hiring managers and figuring out exactly what they need and then how that translates into a candidate, and then kind of bringing the information about UPS to the candidate. Because the roles are union, sometimes we have union mechanics who have never had a union role before and what that entails. So kind of walking them through that. I do a lot of just as much on the internal side with recruitment for our professional candidates as well. So again, talking to candidates, sourcing them. Like I said, UPS kind of attracts candidates themselves, which does make the job really easy in terms of actually finding the candidates for the most part. And then I like to help Eric wherever I can with, he does, he'll join, other groups and talk about resume. We've done a resume review before. We've done kind of different like seminars that he's hosted where he's gone over things for veterans that might help them in the transition process. So I've helped him do that, and a couple of other, veteran hiring initiatives. We send out flyers. The flyers that you guys have probably seen at Orion for your job fairs, those probably came from my team. I probably made some of them. So things like that we help as well. Just trying to identify hard to fill roles and then how we can leverage all of the resources that we have, but specifically veterans for those roles.
Yeah.
That sums up my day.
Well, Kaitlyn, you mentioned mechanics a few times, and I know that that is a big priority for UPS. So for someone who's listening, as like an education piece, are there specific military occupations that transfer well to working with, I guess, UPS in general, but also specific to mechanics? And then also specific to mechanics, are there any skills or certifications that you as a recruiter look for when you're recruiting mechanics?
Yeah, absolutely. So the most transferable like MOS would be like anybody who does like wheeled vehicle mechanics, anybody who works on any sort of heavy vehicle or just anything that where they're like turning a wrench, essentially. Those are kind of the most transferable. We have had a lot of success both in hiring mechanics who actually work on vehicles and also hiring like submarine mechanics, which you wouldn't think so at all. But we have three types of mechanics at UPS. I hire for automotive technicians and trailer technicians. So that's going to be somebody turning a wrench on a package car. And then we also have buildings and systems engineering maintenance mechanics. It's a mouthful. We call them base mechanics internally. But they are basically responsible for the equipment in our buildings, the machinery that keeps our package operations moving. So our conveyor systems is a huge one. So they need an electrical background. They need to have welding up skills. They need to have worked on conveyors, things like that. So kind of two very different types of mechanics. Submarine mechanics work really well for our base mechanics. I've had one of our training managers come to me and say, can you find me more people like these guys in San Diego, because they are the best base mechanics that I've ever seen, and they worked on a sub. And I was like, I can sure try, but that's not something I would have even thought that would have been a relevant transition until he told us that. So, and the good news is we have base mechanic roles open in San Diego right now. So if you know anybody, point them that direction. But it really works well, and it's transferable usually when they're turning a wrench, but most directly as a kind of any sort of vehicle mechanic. And then as far as skills and certifications go, if you can leverage SkillBridge opportunities to get things like a CDL, that is so helpful. We do have roles that require CDLs, and that is the challenge. So if you are, or a veteran who's transitioning, who's been a mechanic, and they have the opportunity to try to do a SkillBridge or leverage any of the veteran programs that are out there for obtaining a CDL, that is so hard for us to find. And that really is, a mechanic with a CDL is just exactly what we need a lot of times, and are definitely our most hard to fill by roles by far. And then anybody who's done anything in industrial maintenance mechanic, so any industrial maintenance certifications, if they can do courses on like any electrical courses as a skill bridge, things like that, that really help for our base mechanic roles. We do have testing for our base mechanic roles, that they do have to pass before we're able to offer the role. And so that's a big knockout for us. Welding experience, things like that really work well for our base mechanics. And then I don't personally recruit for our aircraft mechanics, but we do hire aircraft mechanics. Most of them, I believe, are in Kentucky and Louisville because that's where kind of the biggest, it's the kind of like the base of our air operation. But they are union. They do require some certifications. I think I've got the title here. Give me 1 second. Let me get it pulled up. For our aircraft mechanics, they have to have a high school diploma or a GED, and they need to have a valid FAA airframe and power plant license, and then a driver's license. And then if they have 3 years of experience, aircraft maintenance experience, but on things like Boeing, Airbus, any military jet aircraft works, or any regional or commuter aircraft. So they just need to have some sort of aircraft experience. Now, again, I don't personally hire them. We have a team who just hires for the airline side of things. But any of that type of experience is really helpful for our aircraft mechanics. And that's another one where I feel like would be a good direct transition into UPS, because obviously we have aircraft mechanics in the military.
Yeah.
And that would be very, very transferable skill set into a role with UPS.
Awesome. Eric, did you want to add anything to that, or do you think Kaitlyn covered it?
No, she covered everything. She did awesome. The only thing I would add is so Kentucky, and then also Alaska as well. We do have some positions that open up in Alaska as well.
Hired quite a few GSC techs in Alaska.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you guys have been great with all of the details about careers with UPS. So I hope that this is super valuable to our listeners and people who are interested. But I guess to zoom out a little bit and look at just the culture of UPS, I'm sure, like I said, you guys maybe have different perspectives a little bit just from your different backgrounds, but it sounds like there's so many great things about the culture there. I mean, everyone wants to work for a company that lets you try things you're passionate about and allows you that flexibility. But Eric, from your perspective, why would you say that the culture makes it a good place for veterans to work?
Yeah, no, honestly, so being a veteran myself and transferring over here to UPS, a lot of the, alignments really align to what you did over there and what you did in the military to now. And if you think about it, big picture, it's pretty similar, right? We have a really big mission at UPS, same with the military, and there's a lot of different moving parts that you got to have, people in place to ensure that operation is running, efficiently. Alongside of that as well, I'll kind of cover the VBRG groups as well, a lot of the culture inside of that, and then maybe Kaitlyn can kind of cover a different side of that. But inside of our VBRG groups, that symbol that we have in the back here, that's our symbol of our VBRG groups, and we have about 13 VBRG groups around the United States, with 200 to 400 members per, and veterans, non-veterans. You might have a relative that was a veteran who, you want to be a part of that BBRG, which is amazing. And I get a chance to take a lot of the different stories that these BBRG groups are doing throughout the United States. And I love it because, we continue our day jobs. And then on top of our day jobs with UPS, a lot of the community service that I see these BBRG groups really do is just amazing to see. For instance, we had for the Marine Corps Marathon, we had a handful of volunteers go out there and help out with the Marine Corps Marathon. One of the best stories that I've got a chance to kind of promote inside of our newsletters was about a year ago. We had a veteran who his manager and himself were talking about baseball at the time. And that manager wanted to do something nice for that veteran at the time. And there's so many more that goes into that, but kind of short story here. That manager ended up finding, since he loved baseball so much, he ended up finding I think it was Atlanta Braves, a summer camp where you go to summer camp at the Atlanta Braves stadium. You put the uniform on, you play games there for a whole week. You get to hang out in the locker room for the whole week, all that good stuff. And so that manager at UPS ended up funding through charity, different types of, getting some funds to go ahead and make that happen. And so I got a chance to promote that in some of our newsletter. And I thought that was just amazing to see, some of the different things that is really going on inside of the VBRG groups there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's amazing. That's really cool. And Kaitlyn, what about you from a spouse perspective and any resource groups that you're involved in?
Yeah, so I'm involved in the Women's Leadership Development Group, BRG. So that is one, and they offer mentorship programs. I'm actually doing a large group mentorship program right now to just develop my leadership skills, and it's an awesome opportunity to get to be a part of that and further develop leadership skills, things like that. Like I said, I grew up in UPS, so I've had a lot of exposure over the years to the things that UPS provides both candidates and then the families with. So when I was a kid, my dad, like I said, he was a driver. We lived in North Florida. My dad got tickets to the Daytona 500 because UPS sponsored a car. So my favorite NASCAR at the time, I don't even remember who drove it, Jeff Gordon maybe, was 88 because it was brown and UPS had its own NASCAR. And I got to go to the Daytona 500 when I was a kid because UPS provided that with us. I remember going to family day events at like the hub in Jacksonville because they hosted family events for us to come. And that, like, as a kid, like, those are things that I remember. And so I just love the kind of UPS drivers work long hours, but there's still like the recognition of that family there, which is very similar to military opportunities as well. And I do think that kind of is the very much parallels there between things that service members are offered and kind of things that UPS does. And then UPS also offers lots of development opportunities through things like Percipio, which is a bunch of certifications and classes that you can take online. I'm doing some for project management right now, where I can develop my skills outside of what I do every day. And those are all free courses that I'm able to take because I'm a UPSer. And so things like that, where they have, leadership opportunities, they have skill, like developing your skill opportunities, skill development. I guess I could say it that way. Things like that UPS offers, which is really great. And then from a perspective of being a military spouse with UPS, I got lucky that my roles were remote. Not all of them are, but you do have transfer opportunities. If you were to move and a position was open, things like that, where there are opportunities for veterans and spouses to get roles with UPS. The benefits for UPS are also fantastic, especially if you're a union employee, especially for people who are transitioning out of the military. One of the biggest highlights is our benefits for our union employees. They do not pay out of pocket for insurance, very much like TRICARE. Their whole family is included, so dependent, spouse. That is a huge thing that I think veterans should be aware of. It's the biggest thing for me when we were transitioning out was the concern about insurance because we're losing TRICARE, and TRICARE is such great insurance. UPS union employees do not pay for insurance. If you are a management employee, you do pay for, there is a cost there, but it's relatively low cost. So the benefits when you have a pension with UPS union roles, 401k match if you're management, or part of our total rewards package. So the benefits are really there, vacation, discretionary days, things like that. When you're getting out of the military, those are things you didn't have to think about before, but you have to think about now. And so the highlighting those things I think is really important for veterans.
Absolutely. So you guys have both mentioned so many great things that would be attractive to anyone about a company, but if you had to choose just one thing, each of you, to say that you enjoy most about working at UPS, what would that be? Kaitlyn, I'll ask you first.
I think the development opportunities, both personally and professionally, the opportunity for growth. I've worked with so many hiring managers who have been with UPS for 30 plus years. And they've stuck with the company for a reason. And I think that's because UPS continues to provide them with opportunities for professional growth and then also personal growth, especially through our BRG groups, a great way for like personal growth. So definitely, I would say just the potential for development personally and professionally at UPS is someplace I've never really seen anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about you, Eric?
And then just to kind of go off of Kaitlyn as well, like I've never seen, a lot of our management here, 30, 35, 40 years with the company. And that really does say something as well. And I speak with a lot of management throughout here and, still very motivated, still very, mission oriented on focused. And so I love that as well. I'll go with, stepping military to here, I'll say our culture inside, and I'll emphasize a little bit, veterans coming over to UPS. And I work with a lot of very, very talented veterans here at UPS. And it's just awesome to see that still same, service that they have. And so I would have to say the culture as far as inside of our whole veterans, we're at right now, we're about 19,000 strong veterans that work for UPS, and so I really am able to be inside of that culture, and it's really great to be a part of. We just did a Memorial Day ceremony last week, which was an awesome turnout. We did a slideshow of everything right there, so it was a really good honoring those same traditions that you had in the military. You're still honoring those same traditions here to this day. When you step out and you step in foot with UPS here.
I love that. 19,000. That is impressive.
19,000. Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, well, to wrap things up, I have really, really enjoyed talking with you guys today, and I'm sure anyone will enjoy listening because you're both so engaging and you have such great things to say about UPS, which is awesome. But to close things out, if you had any advice for transitioning service members or military spouses, and it doesn't have to be specific to UPS, just in general, what would that be? Eric, I'll go with you first.
Yeah, I'll start off. I would say really, well, you have the time, right? Well, you have 6 months out from your transition, a year out from your transition, a year and a half, whatever you think about those skills that you've learned in the military, and how do those transfer over to a career role. And once you really start to find out what those skills are, start to pick and choose really what you want to do when you step foot into the civilian world. Once you identify, what you want to do, your why behind what you want to do, then start kind of building up your foundation. So your LinkedIn, start to get on LinkedIn actively and really root down and build your LinkedIn, and then build a master resume. And then from that master resume, taking all those skills that you really, honed in throughout your service, at any point in time that you do apply for any specific role, whether it's UPS or anything else, have a targeted resume that's really directed to that job description. That's one of the biggest advice I would love to say is have a targeted resume as you apply. So yeah.
Awesome. Kaitlyn, what about you?
Take advantage of every single opportunity that you can when you're transitioning out. All of the education opportunities, all of the certifications, do a skill bridge if there's one that interests you in your area. Figure out as a spouse, there's a lot of opportunities that we have that aren't necessarily well advertised for education, getting different certifications, taking classes online. Just utilize whatever resources you have. Education is huge when you're kind of separating from the military. I think that can be kind of a knockout for a lot of people, as a lot of places require degrees and not necessarily just experience. So if you have the opportunity and the time, just utilize the free certifications and education and things like that you're able to, because it really does make a difference. Even if it's just to check a box on your resume, some of our roles require a degree and it's just a box to check. Even if it's not a relevant degree, take advantage of it, because a lot of times those opportunities are at low cost or no cost to spouses and veterans.
Yeah, that's great advice. Well, thank you both so much for joining me. I've had such a great time learning more about your individual roles in UPS as a whole. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Megan.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Orion's From the Battlefield to the Boardroom podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, or SoundCloud so that you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you, so if you have any feedback, please send me an email at podcast@oriontalent.com. Our goal is to help all military job seekers through their transition and beyond, so make sure you share our show with your friends. See you next time.